What is a function? In programming, a function is a collection or a group of statements that perform a particular function, that perform a particular job. And we already know some of the functions which are built in the C. For example, we know about main. It is a function. We know about printf. It is a function. We know about scanf. It is a function. We know about strcpy. It is also a function. And each of these functions is a built-in function which is already there. The definition of these functions is already there, provided to us by the C for doing certain jobs. Every C program has at least one function, which is the main function. Whenever we write a program in C, we first, before main, we declare the functions that we are going to use beneath in future. So first thing, we need to declare the functions. So whenever we declare a function, the form there would be that initially we will keep the return type, then we will keep the name of the function, and after that there will be the information about the parameters. This will be the declaration, and then later we have to define those functions. A declaration helps to inform the compiler about what functions the user has created in the code. Okay, there can be two types of functions. One is built-in functions, which I already told you. There are many of those, and there may be user-defined functions, functions which the user defines or the programmer defined functions. The programmer writes those functions. And first we need, whenever we create programmer defined functions, we first declare those functions before main, and then we can do this. We do the definition of those functions. We write the definition of those functions later. The definition of the function will consist of a body of the function where code will be written. So when we define a function, the format will be somewhat like this. It will be return type, then after that the name of the function, then parenthesis, and inside those parentheses will be parameters. So the first thing, it will be the return type, which means what will this function return. So there may be two types of functions. some may return some value, and there will be other type of function which may not return any value. So if some function returns an integer, so the return type will become int. If certain function does not return anything, the return type will be void, void, which implies that this function is not returning anything. And these parameters it may be a single parameter or many parameters here, which will be the values, the variables which are present there in a particular order that represent the values which the function takes when it is called. So this will be the form of a function. Now let us write a program in which we use functions to do a certain job. We create a function ourselves and do some particular job inside that function. That job may also be done inside main, but we will do that certain job outside main in some function that we will create. One more thing, that functions are very important in C, in programming in general, because a good programmer divides the problem into parts and then creates a function for each part and codes that separately. So this we call as modular programming. So we divide the problem into modules, parts, and each part is coded separately. Coding for each part is done separately. This makes the writing code easy, and it is also beneficial when we are at the debugging phase. If we have errors in the program, it is easy to find and correct them in functions than the other way, that all the things are present inside main. Let us say we have to write a program to find the greater of two numbers, but we have to do this using functions. Program to find greater of two integers using functions. Let us start writing that code. So let us say that uh, since we have two numbers, let us take two numbers, for example, A and B. Let us directly store some values in it. So let us say A contains a value 10 and B contains a value 5. and now we have to find which of the two is greater. Here we have to use functions. So let us declare a function here. Let us say that I will create a function greater, and that function will have two parameters. So I will create a function greater which will take two values and both values will be integers. So I will mention that thing only here in declaration, that this function will have two parameters and both will be integers. The name of those parameters need not mention here. And once this whole job is done by this function, it will return a value. That value will also be an integer. So this is the return type. This is the return type. This is the name of the function. You can keep any name. And these are two parameters of the functions. Both will be of int return of int type. Now let us go outside main and define this function. What is here this? This is function declaration here. And now let us define this function here. So the function is int and we are calling it greater. It will have two parameters, both will be int. Since now we are defining this function, we have to name those parameters. Let us say one of the parameters is x and the another is y. So this is the return type int. This is the name of function, two parameters. One is x, one is y, and both are integers. Now let us call this function here in the main. So we just have to write greater, and this function will be called. The execution will go from here unto here, this place. So the greater function will be called, but this greater function needs two values to do certain job. So those two values we have here, 10 and 5. 10 is stored in A and 5 is stored in B. So here what we have done, we have taken two numbers, 10 and 5, stored them in A and B. Then we have sent these A and B to this function greater. So a copy of this will go into here. So since A is storing 10, a copy of 10 will be put into X and Y will store a copy of B, that is 5. So now 10 is here and 5 is here. Now the role of this function is to find the greater of these two numbers. To find the greater, we obviously will use an if. We will write if x is greater than y, then we can say printf, or if we want to return, we will not write printf. So if we will directly write here some value, for example g means greater, g equal to x, else Now we are done. That if x is greater, then x goes into g. Otherwise, if y is greater, then y goes into g. This function is done, and in this function we have found that g now contains the greater value. So we have to return this value. We have to return this value g. So the value of g is to be returned. So we will return g. That means this value will go back here. This it will come back here. So we need to store this value in something. Let us call this something max, variable max. So we have a variable max in which we are storing what is being returned from this place. G is coming back. This G will be stored in max. We need to define these things also, declare them also. Int G, sorry, int max here, and here we need to write int G. Now finally the answer is max. We just have to print the answer. We will write printf the greater integer is what? It is max. Percentage D max. We are done. Let us save this program as, let us call it function great. Compile it. We have to put a comma here. Okay, done. Run the program. So the answer says the greater is 10